Welcome to The Authority On, the podcast brought to you by Device Authority.
Hello, welcome to The Authority On, the Device Authority podcast. My name is James Penney. I'm the CTO of Device Authority, and this week I'm joined by Robert Hann. Robert, would you like to introduce yourself?
Of course, thank you, James. I'm Robert Hann. I'm the VP of Sales for our Centre of Expertise at Entrust. I've been in the cryptography world for nearly 20 years, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Great, thank you very much. So today's topic is about post-quantum crypto, really, and PQC as it is, and it's a hot topic. It's one that gets discussed a lot. I think there's a lot of how can I say it? I guess there's some myths floating around. I think there's not a lot of straightforward and clear understanding that many people might have for the particular topic. So do you think maybe it's a good place to start is to explain exactly what PQC is, if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah, of course. And there is misunderstanding. I run a lot of events. I was at an event last week in London, and a number of the delegates didn't know what PQC was. It's actually relatively easy to explain. So the world runs on what we call classical cryptography. So algorithms that we've been used to using for years and years. Take RSA, its inception in 1977, so 46 years ago. That makes it very classical. And we rely on that across many elements of our IT landscapes and the internet. Post-quantum cryptography is new algorithms to replace vulnerable classical cryptography when quantum computers come along. So when quantum computers do arrive, some of the classical cryptography is vulnerable. It's not just weakened, it's unusable for what we're using it today. So we have to migrate large parts of our cryptography from classical cryptography to post-quantum cryptography.
Okay, and interesting you said. So what are the threats, I guess, then, that are surrounding this for today and tomorrow?
Sure. It's a great question, because there are actually immediate threats, but the long-term threats, let's just cover those. So the long-term threats are quantum computers can break these classical algorithms, so you can decrypt data. You can attack systems that are using classical cryptography, like chips in connected cars or in electronics that have not been updated to these new algorithms that are resistant to quantum computers. The immediate threats, though, fall into two camps. I've touched on one of them just now. So long life connected devices. So that's devices that are being built today, cars, IoT systems, electronic components, electronic consumer products, really anything with chips in them that have cryptography baked into those chips to provide security services in the mobile phone, in the car, whatever it is. Those kind of things actually have a future threat. They have a future threat because you can't bring them back into a manufacturing site and update them, or post-issuance update them in the field. So they're leaving production lines now, potentially with a quantum computing threat built in. And so organizations that are making those kinds of devices are having to act now to develop ways of protecting those devices once they're out in the field in 5-10 years' time, depending on when you think quantum computers are coming. The second immediate threat is actually, it applies to nearly every organization in the world, and that's around long life data. So if you've encrypted your long life data, and long life data could be healthcare records, but it could be HR records. So James, your information in device authorities directory and my information in Entrust directory is long life data. It's as valuable in 10 years as it is today. If that is protected with classical cryptography that's vulnerable to quantum computers, if it's stolen now, it can be decrypted later. It's called harvest now, decrypt later. And we know organizations are already trying to mitigate this threat. So the best example that everyone will know is Google. Google have implemented these new PQC algorithms into their cloud to protect against the harvest now, decrypt later threat to data or customer data in the Google cloud. Other organizations around the world are piloting capabilities using the new PQC algorithms. So about a month ago, I heard about Vodafone piloting VPNs using PQC. I separately heard about BT providing a backbone network to HSBC that's piloting quantum resistant, in fact, quantum safe technology, something called quantum key distribution based cryptography. Basically a replacement for classical cryptography rather than an evolution. So in summary, we've got anyone with long life data should start to look at their post-quantum threat or their quantum threat, and anyone who's manufacturing or creating or managing long life connected devices.
So it starts today. So I want just something, there's a couple of things you mentioned there, which I just wanted to touch on. So the harvest now, decrypt later, that affects everything. Because right now we're communicating freely across the internet, every web page you visit, touch, send information about, all of that. And it's been, as you mentioned, Google been taking steps, and some big names there, Vodafone, I think you mentioned too. All of that information could just be collected, stored until the time when it could be unveiled. So it's not just affecting businesses, I think is the way I would probably summarize it. It's everything and everyone, it seems.
Well, it is, as long as it's long life data. So if it's data that, is dynamic data that it, changes tomorrow, then
Sure.
You're not susceptible. But if it's data in a long life, it's long life data. Another really good example of this kind of use case are contracts. So many contracts are being signed digitally today, and those contracts that have long lives, like 10-year lives or 15 or 20 years, or smart contracts in the world of blockchain, they may have very long lives for supply chain of pharmaceuticals. I'm quite familiar with that use case there. They're all susceptible to the quantum threat, because in the case of a digital signature, a quantum computer could break that signature, manipulate the document and re-sign. So you need to protect that document with a quantum PQC signature between now and when quantum computers come. So kind of like a secondary signature as an extra seal on that digital contract or digital document. So that there are quite a few use cases that we see in our daily lives that have this harvest now, decrypt later kind of threat built in, that we may not, realize, such as that one.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I appreciate that. So what is then, I guess, the current state of this PQC? Because the standards haven't been chosen yet, right? Finally.
But not chosen. The standards are coming out now. So the whole world has been watching the NIST competition, which the NIST competition was designed to create post-quantum resistant algorithms to replace public key encryption. and various flavors of that. And that competition started in, I think, about 2015. I believe it started with about 78 mathematicians submitting algorithm candidates. And last July, the four key public key were published after that multi-year competition. And that was really the trigger point for when two or three things can happen. Firstly, the standards bodies, NIST themselves being a standards body, but IETF, ITU, IEEE, Wi-Fi Consortium, Chip and Pin, EMV, all of the bodies that create the standards that use these cryptographic algorithms can start to develop and publish their standards. And the draft standards from NIST came out, I think, about a month ago for those four algorithms. The second thing that happens is we start to get peer review. So once you've got those algorithms out to the world and we can start building them into our solutions, they can be tested or attacked by peer review, or and we can look at where there might be weaknesses or vulnerabilities. Equally, we can look at how they work in the real world, because these algorithms are heavier, they use longer keys or create bigger hashes, and therefore that's going to put more pressure on the compute that we use to run our applications and portals and whatever they're used for. The third thing that happens on the release of these draft algorithms is the assurance organizations like Common Criteria, FIPS, and so on. They can update their assessment schemes to include PQC, and therefore you as a vendor that wants to put their product through Common Criteria or FIPS, and that includes Entrust, because we provide cryptographic based products that have to have third-party assurance like hardware security modules, PKI, and so on. We can then put them through those third-party schemes to give them their certification, and that of course takes time. So when you add all these things together, while we have the first draft standards, we still have quite a long way to go for two things. One, that we can produce assured products with third-party assurance. And secondly, then probably the most fundamental thing is we can start to build up some level of confidence in these new algorithms. And that only comes with time. As I said earlier, RSA, we've had 46 years to build up confidence in it. These new algorithms are very, very young, haven't had exposure into the big wild west of the internet, and therefore they're going to take time for us to build up that confidence. But safe to say, NIST have very high confidence in them. Their competition has been thorough, and it has been running for nearly 10 years now.
Yeah, a lot of data collected, and I think it was an interesting story about one of the proposed algorithms actually falling last year, wasn't there? I can't remember the full article about it.
It was with a 2015 laptop with a quite a classical attack. It was broken. Now, it's good you bring it up, James, because actually in the world of cryptography, that's a good thing. It's not like game over for that algorithm.
Yeah.
This is what peer review produces. This is the outcome. So you tweak the algorithm, you make the necessary adjustments so it's not susceptible to that attack vector. And the more that happens, the more confidence we can build in these new cryptographic algorithms, and the sooner the better, really, because quantum computers could fall into the hands of the bad actor, and then who knows what kind of attacks would be possible. Not just a direct attack. You can use quantum to accelerate side channel attacks. You can do the same with AI. So we really want more confidence before quantum computers come. So this is a good thing that that algorithm was broken.
Absolutely. Yeah, I guess it's good to get validation of when you find these things, so you don't just get to the end of a process and go, oh, no one found anything, so it's okay, we'll just carry on. So you get actual confirmation that people were trying and have found things, and they've been iterated on to address those issues. So that's a really good point. That's a really good point. Appreciate that. So you mentioned just towards the end about before these computers come. So how far away do you think? And I think if you took a random sampling, you'd get ideas all over the place. But how far away do you think these quantum computers really are? And it's, well, I mean, they're here, but how far away are they from really sort of beginning to undermine, I think, a lot of the security that we've relied on for so long?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's the $1 million question, or you ask some governments, it's the multi-billion-dollar question. The amount of money and the economic benefit that governments are seeing through quantum computing.
Yep.
But at the moment, we have the IBM quantum computer, 433 qubits, which is actually a very tiny computer. It's still a quantum computer. And I think very recently, Google have claimed supremacy at the moment in the race to quantum, because they've been able to carry out calculations with more clean qubits than anyone else. It's not the size of the number of qubits, it's how they operate and interoperate between qubits to produce the necessary result. But in layman's terms, 433 qubits is tiny. For general purpose computing, we're going to need thousands or tens of thousands of qubits working harmoniously and cleanly together, called clean calculations together, to enable us to say, yes, we've reached quantum computing. So there's a few other things to say, actually. The first is that the cloud providers have talked about providing quantum computing as a service by 2028, so less than 5 years away. You do have your pundits out there that say, no, quantum computers won't be here in this generation. And then you have your even more aggressive predictions of sooner than 2028. So it's a broad spread of opinion. Largely, everyone is kind of averaging at the end of the decade. And the CNSA standard, CNSA 2.0 from the National Security Agency, set out this timeline in standards for IT, different IT use cases like software and firmware signing, browser-based things. And they basically said, you really want to aim to be ready with PQC by as early as 2025 and no later than 2030. And that kind of validates the world's average view of when quantum computers are coming from the NSA, and other standards bodies and institutes around the world are kind of giving the same advice now. So it's really all going to happen between now and probably 2028. If you assume, as security good best practices, you want to be 2 years ahead of your adversary. And this is the other problem in quantum computing, is you don't really know how developed your adversary is. So in the military and intelligence circles, they have a much larger cushion. They aim for 10 years ahead because your adversary is a state actor. So probably 2028, 2030 is a reasonable point to say to yourself, right, I need to have transitioned to PQC before then, fully tested, fully interoperable with assured products and everything else. Can I do it in the time frame I've got? And if you have any kind of concern about how long it takes to transition a large IT landscape to the new PQC algorithms, then you really should have started yesterday. About 30% of major organizations now have PQ readiness teams based on recent questionnaires. I'm not so sure. I speak at a lot of events and I say, who's got a PQ readiness team already? And, often it's less than 20%. However, it might be those people are not involved, in these very big organizations. They may not know about the PQ readiness team. But certainly, if those timelines are to be believed, and I believe them, there's enough evidence out there, with Google acting already and big organizations piloting PQC, that actually they are reasonable timelines to aim for. It's about working back from them and saying, well, if I've got 1,000 instances of RSA to replace at multiple layers in the stack, because of course cryptography lives at chip, OS, network, application, and they all have to be interoperable, I've got quite a complex change management challenge on my hands, which is going to take multiple years. So if you work back, you really should be starting now, just to be sure.
And you mentioned the year 2025 in what you were just saying. And for anyone who's been working from home, I think, since the pandemic and hasn't bought a new calendar, that is just over a year away. let's not forget. It's coming to the end of 2023 now. You've only got 2024 really to start putting those cycles in. And you're right. I think it's a mammoth task. I think one of the things that really is the kind of cornerstone for it is about creating crypto agility, is what I would say, and about making your lives easier in the future for making the pivot when you actually have to. But you guys, I say you guys, Entrust, I think you've put a lot of work in this area as well, and support for various bits and pieces, I think, already or coming in your particular products. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, you picked on, the sexy word at the moment is crypto agility.
I did.
It's more than hype. Crypto agility is simply changing crypto. So the principle behind implementing crypto agility now is to make your journey easier for PQ. And there's some simple things that organizations can do. The first one is start asking your supply chain. So ask your supply chain, when am I going to get PQ ready solutions from you? And when am I going to be able to upgrade or implement solutions that can transition easily, that have crypto agility built in, i.e. kind of like a magic switch where, I flick that switch when I want to switch over to PQC. And Entrust have already released solutions with that magic switch. So we've been working in the standards bodies, IETF and so on, around something called hybrid bridge, which is essentially a solution, in our case, a PKI, that has that magic switch. So it can issue certificates with both classical and post-quantum cryptography, so that you can endpoints to use RSA today, but tomorrow I'd like you to use dilithium or Sphinx or whatever. You can also look at how you develop software. So when you're not only just buying solutions from the IT community, you can look at how you do DevOps and how you develop software. So you should be telling your software developers, quantum's coming. I'd like you to add in support for PQC as early as you can, if not now, so that I have, again, that magic switch built into that software, so I don't have to build it again in 3 or 4 years' time when, there's a few more quantum breakthroughs and that timeline has been reduced. The other thing you can do, and to build in crypto agility, is to modernize. So some of the crypto-based solutions that organizations are using are pretty legacy, and you've kind of lived with it. It's kind of okay, but some of them cannot be made PQ ready. So you should be implementing tools and capabilities like a modern key management system, a modern PKI, and things from other vendors like Entrust that have that crypto agility built in, and sort of cleaning out the closet of the legacy things that just cannot be made PQ ready. And so there's kind of a breathing space right now where you can look at your landscape and say, how am I going to make my PQ readiness journey simpler? Should I be consolidating all those self-signed CAs and those Microsoft on-prem PKIs and consolidating into a modern PQ ready PKI now? Should I be looking at all those point solutions of how I manage keys and consolidating into a modern decentralized key management system? Should I be looking at my supply chain in software development, how I sign code and all of that? Yes, you should. The more you can look at now and build in crypto agility, the much easier this journey is going to be down the line, because there will absolutely be parts of your landscape that you uncover later in an oh shit moment, where you have to frantically, fix some vulnerability because it doesn't support PQ, or you have to go to the supplier and make sure that comes as quick as possible so you can complete your migration of an ecosystem. So we're not the only ones recommending this. The analysts and the experts around the world are saying, look, prepare now, because we don't know what the breakthroughs and how fast they're going to come. So let's build that crypto agility in. Let's start modernizing where we can and consolidating and so on. And then things will be easier over the years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you said, you don't know how far along your adversaries are, right? So by the time you find out, it might actually be too late for you. So as much prep and planning and work that you can put in now, I think is going to pay off in the future, instead of just one day opening up, I don't know, the register and realizing that there's a new computer out there that's really going to ruin your day.
There is actually just one more thing to add. One of the problems in PQ readiness is when you look at the problem as a business problem, it's really difficult to go to the board of directors and say, I need X million dollars to prepare for PQ readiness. And the first question they'll ask is, when are quantum computers coming? And therefore, when do you need to be ready by? And you're like, well, not really sure. It's quite hard to justify things on an unknown timeline.
Yep.
And we've been saying at Entrust for quite some time that there are many elements in PQ readiness that are common to other areas of information assurance. So, for example, if you're adopting a zero trust strategy, then there are parts of zero trust like visibility, better governance, risk assessments, and understanding where your data is and how it's protected and by what cryptography. They are common to both journeys. So putting PQ readiness as a sort of bonus or side outcome to your zero trust journey is a very sensible thing to do. And in fact, last week when I was in Germany, one of the very major German customers says, well, why don't we add the PQ readiness to AI? Because, of course, AI is being used to accelerate cyber attacks and improve the quality of phishing and everything else. It's kind of the same thing. And he said, I'm going back to my business to say, let's put PQ readiness into our AI, because that absolutely has the visibility of the board. There's so much talk, ChatGPT and everything. why wouldn't you? Look at the opportunity of AI and look at the threat, one of which is, these kind of attacks and preparing for quantum.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, I think we got all the buzzwords into this particular podcast. That completes my bingo card, so appreciate it. Well, I really appreciate you joining me here today, and it's been very interesting to listen to you. If anyone else out there is listening that wants to go into any deeper, I mean, you went very deep today, to be honest, but deeper level, more in-depth questions or anything like that, then I'm sure either Robert will be happy to help, or anyone at Entrust, and also here at Device Authority, we're happy to help out too. But Robert, again, really appreciate you joining us. Clearly very insightful. You got a lot of experience, and I learned a few things today as well, and I hope everyone else did too. So thank you ever so much.
Thank you, James. I appreciate being given the opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Authority On, a podcast brought to you by Device Authority. If you have any questions about the subject matter in this podcast, please head to the Device Authority website, deviceauthority.com. See you next time.